Welcome to Talking with Patrick, talking about everything and anything in Ireland with a harder edge. In this episode, I talk to Councillor Hazel De Nortúin. We go into depth about her work as a Dublin City Councillor in Ballyfermot and Drimnagh and her passion for social change. So in today's episode, I'm here with Hazel De Nortúin, Councillor Hazel De Nortúin. Hazel, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
No worries. No problem at all. Good to have you. So, Hazel, you're from the Ballyfermot area, isn't that right?
Yeah, originally from Cherry Orchard and living in Clondalkin and Greenford at the moment.
And so you're a councillor for Ballyfermot and Drimnagh?
I am, yeah, which includes Chapel Lizard, bits of Walkinstown, some of Inchicore. So yeah, it's a bit of a dense, broad area, but yeah.
Yeah, you've got quite a multifaceted area there.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll change the boundaries and stuff. So we had a bit of Island Bridge that moved. A big chunk of Inchicore was taken out and stuff because they were reducing the size capacity. So with 5 councillors in that area for that size of a population can keep you busy.
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so so you're a councillor since about 2016.
Yes.
What made you want to become a councillor?
So there's kind of an accidental background to it in a way, I suppose. So as I said, I did grow up in Cherry Orchard, so I always would have had a social conscience because of my mother would have been involved in the community aspect of it, you know. Before it was highly regulated, it was, out cleaning the streets in the good weather, or you'd go down and leave your 50 pence in with the lower Cherry Orchard Community Centre and just pile all these kids onto a bus and bring us to Mosney and all, like our back was just kind of really loose, but very important at the time. So I would have had that in the background to be aware of it. But the relationship that I was in had broken down and I was renting just as a short term within Ballyfermot, just down the road. And the European elections were on and Breed Smith and her team were out canvassing and they knocked on my door and were like, look, we're out canvassing and stuff. And at the time, my child was about 3 and I was trying to get him into the Gael school that I went to in Island Bridge. They said they weren't taking anyone from Ballyfermot because it wasn't in the catchment area. So one of the questions I was like, well, what are you doing for this area for Irish language services? And had a bit of an engagement back and forth. So she had said, look, I don't know what I can do to help you, but, I'll try my best. And through the jigs and the reels, I ended up getting involved in her European election campaign and then got involved with the party that way. And then when she got elected to the Dáil, I got co-opted into her seat. So I would have come into it from being introduced that end of it through engaging with the system. But I don't come from a huge background or a pedigree of, people who would engage in electoral politics that way.
Okay, so sort of a type of not your traditional route.
No,
being a councillor.
Know. Yeah, I didn't even know. Which I find is kind of interesting that way. What I'd say to people is you might look from the outside looking in, you might think it's unattainable, but literally anybody can run in, particularly local elections. The Dáil and the European are different animals themselves, budget-wise. But it is accessible that way. But, then again, you do need a big campaign and the understanding to do it. But I didn't know that it could be that accessible. I didn't know, I didn't really think about how people would run in elections. But it was through more campaigning for the Irish language and taking that realisation when you have kids, what's in my community, what's here for kids, that I was like, somebody has to do something about this, and I got to be in my bonnet.
Yeah, so you're kind of thinking, you're living there in the community and you're saying, okay, we don't have this.
Yeah.
We don't have that.
Yeah.
Why don't we have it?
Yeah. And it's only when I did, as I said, I had my son, that I did start to kind of look at it through a different lens. And then I didn't stop. They just kept going then. And, we ended up opening up an Irish language preschool. So we have a Nina going, big campaign to get a Gael school. And all of that has always been a cornerstone to why I got involved in local politics. So it was never really for the hugely political background or the intellectual argument for it. It's been community development and, well, what's affecting those on the ground really and what can make a better outcome for women and children in particularly is the drive I'd have for it.
So would you agree that there's sort of been, since the kind of 2000s, maybe that there's sort of like a new generation of councillors and politicians, as before, kind of I remember just kind of growing up, in the 90s and stuff like that, listening to my parents talk about politics and whatever. It was always very much the men in suits.
Yeah.
And even into the early 2000s, the men in suits. And it seemed like unless you were in that type of club, maybe you wouldn't have a chance. Do you kind of see that happening?
Yeah, but it kind of peaked, I think, as well, because when I was getting involved in it, it was around the water charges protests as well. So that obviously would have seen like a completely fractured base for established politics at the time, and it would have given people an inroad. And I found a lot of people who were probably middle class or middle aged in a way that had to come in their retirement to find the new lease for life because they were out having street protests, and you could just see a lot of people's approach to public organisation of the communities change. And so I did see that change then. What I'm also seeing changing though as well from talking to local politicians that are in there who are probably 30 years and over are saying how it's completely changed with social media and access to politicians in that way. So I think you're having two changes. You're having a like different, the fabric of politics has changed in Ireland. Obviously it would have been Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael would have had the biggest market of it. That's now down to I think about 50% is what their numbers are at. So you're having all these fractured smaller parties and stuff. But also, so you're having that inroad being opened up, but also a lot of them getting out of it because of the access to it is too intense for what it was originally set up to do. It was meant to be a part-time role.
Yeah.
Whereas at the minute it's full-time and beyond, with the accessibility, depending, I suppose, how you take the job.
So it would seem like that a lot of the councillors do, it seems like something that, should be kind of looked after for by the governments in a way, because when years and years ago, we didn't hear too much from councillors, or that could just be me not paying attention. But it seems like the role of councillors now is becoming even ever more prominent because maybe some needs aren't looked after in the community, and they needed a representative there. Do you see that type, that type of situation?
I think it can be because you can be exposed in a different way as well. Like a lot of the conversations I'd probably have with people as well in my community that I represent is they'd be like, you're a TD, can you do this? I'm like, no, I'm not a TD, I'm a councillor. And just trying to, people don't want to hear the background to it because I can understand they're meeting with for an initial need and housing or something, but as a councillor you're on your own really. You've no admin support, no office, nothing else, whereas a TD is a different animal altogether. So you kind of would get that now where you're trying to turn around the same amount of responses, the same amount of what's going on over there. Do we need to be building campaign on this, particularly on the left, I suppose, is really about campaign building as well. So there would be huge demand on that. Is it achievable? I don't know. Is it long-term attainable? I don't know. But that's the beast of it. It's very fast-paced on that way, particularly because of the landscape around social media now, You have to churn those videos out quick.
Yeah, so you're more on the ground, let's say.
Yeah, I prefer to so I tried to keep up with that pace, but I just can't because I obviously have a young family as well, and so I just have gone back more to try and do in-face engagement with people. So more clinics, more sitting down and talking to people and seeing how we can get through it, because you can't keep up with the 24 hours approach to doing it. You have to try and put some structure around it, otherwise I got burnt out after the last election, and then was a local election and then a general election, and once you hit that stage, even if you wanted to keep going, your body just tells you you're just wiped out, you can't absorb it, you just kind of feel like you're looking at the waves hitting you. So putting structure on it is very important in that role, because again, it's probably reflective of the area you represent, and I take it very serious when I'm dealing with cases that I know the state should be doing more, particularly if it's around domestic violence and stuff. And you're dealing with a lot of trauma coming through, and you hold on to that because you're so frustrated that you're like, what do you mean you can't deal with this person because they might have arrears and something else? Just a whole complicated case to this. So you hold on to that. So you have to learn, I did anyway, had to learn how to just structure all of that.
So you have a lot of weight on your shoulders then.
Yeah, you do. It can kind of make you sick in that way, like anything can with stress or with absorbing it, is that you have to probably ingrain yourself into the community and engage with the other organisations who are doing the frontline organisations, I call them, because they're literally holding back the needs of people because the state, doesn't resource it enough. So yeah, you have to kind of follow that. So I'm 10 years nearly in it now, and that's the lesson I learned, is to, you have to you can only do what you can do. Some of it you have to learn to just pace yourself in it. You can't just keep going in and saying, here you what do you mean? You need this response now, not in 7 days' time, type of thing. You have to pick your battles sometimes.
Yeah.
And I have done that. I kind of try to focus around the intimidation to families and just women and children. I just really find that they need to have so much more wraparound supports around them, vulnerable people.
And so that was one of the things I noticed that you're really active in, is the problem with domestic violence and violence against women.
Yeah, so it's kind of gone on a few years now, the campaigning around it, particularly in the area, but it really came about around a unfortunate event of young women dying by suicide in the community, and the HSC had pulled a report together to try and identify it, because they call it a cluster, because it was unusual that young women, particularly women with children, would take their own life. It's something that usually has always been, particularly how they were dying as well, would have been more male dominated. So the HSC had done a report, and one of the points that had come out of it, some was around some small bits around addiction, and then around housing was a big piece as well. And one of the key points as well was around domestic violence. So the community had trying to draw out that piece. They set up a subgroup, and we were meeting for a couple of years and a couple of months, and I was like, look, we need to really get some teeth on this, and just I need to get behind something physical just so I can say, here's exactly what it's like. Yeah. So we got some funding. I got some funding and went back to it, and Saoirse is the organisation that we were working with, and through the year they pulled it back, working with a group in particular who was tendered to get the research piece. And what I'd done was all the stuff that we were speaking about, put it in a concrete, structured report, and gave the facts that we already knew. But what it came back to us was that the level of violence within those suffering from or being victim of domestic violence was far more higher than those in their surrounding areas. So they recognise it in a particular way, and you might say, so some areas that have medium, high risk, whatever, but in Cherry Orchard in particular, in Ballyfermot, was all high risk. So the threat to violence or losing your life was that high constantly across the board, the complex needs. And that gave us a base to fight going forward, to fight for more resources. So it's not enough, more needs to be done. Because if you can push, this is the frustrating point, because you can push at one avenue, you can say, right, look, we have an issue with domestic violence, women need to come forward, let's support you, let's identify it. But unless the other services move with it, like housing, like maybe addiction and staying in your community, if that doesn't move, what you're bringing women to speak about, where they're going to go from that. So that's the point, that you kind of have to chip away at everything and to really make a change.
And I'd say there's probably a lot of red tape to even get to that point.
There was, well, because I'm on the council as well, so my point would have been around housing, and look, I can't build the houses, I can't, push, to get everybody into housing. I can try and advocate as best I can, and that was a frustrating point, because I know people wanted it to move quicker, but what I could do was to go in and advocate for people in that room and say, look, you can't look at this black and white, you have to take people's backgrounds and everything together. So from that as well, we were successful in getting more funding to try and look at it, because it was a bespoke response, and fund an organisation who had the expertise in dealing with people with chronic need and around family support, all of it, not just addiction or anything, but having that way into people's homes to say, how can we support you, and building that support around them. So they're the things that you can kind of probably go in and push it. And we were lucky, we got about 11 families we worked with. We got about 4 to 5 women out of really vulnerable targeted spaces and got them into safe housing, and got the supports around them to move with them, rather than just saying, right, there you go, your house, see you later. It's moving the supports with them. So all of that happens in the background. You don't often get an opportunity to speak about that bit, but they're the type of things that you can do in the position that you're in making sure that when you're at that table, that it's not just a case of, oh, that's antisocial behaviour. It's like, no, it's not antisocial behaviour. It's actually severe intimidation, or it could be family abuse within it. It could be all different things. And holding the council essentially to task and saying, listen to us, we're explaining to you why this happens, and we'll work with you to try and prevent that. And we have had good success of that now. We can see some of the change not coming through, but it's not work. It's not the sexy work, I suppose, that you can get out in the corner and highlight, because it's sensitive. But that's through all of that. There's the bits that you can kind of really pull from it, and and hopefully make a change in some people's lives, because through all the hard stuff, if you can make a change in a young family's life, or I say young family because I'm always looking at children who can't advocate for themselves, then the rest of it, and the rest of the banging your head against the wall is fine, once you can see those things working in favour,
Yeah. And what type of, I know you're saying it's domestic violence and all, but what type of obstacles are these families and these women up against?
Some of it would be around intimidation, drug intimidation, debt, the fallout of debt. We're seeing a horrible new response to intimidation at the moment, which is arson attacks on people's homes. And again, like we had a housing SPC today, and the antisocial behaviour unit were doing a report on it, and in fairness, they've listened to us and they're catching up on it. But like even the staff member in there had said, like, it's a new epidemic, which because there's a housing crisis on, they're targeting people's homes. So with arson attacks, so they're essentially left without a home. Like, what it's the worst thing you could do to someone right now is to leave them homeless with all of their possessions gone. And then unfortunately, in my area, but unfortunately for some, no one has lost their lives yet. And it has stopped, I think, after that poor child Tig and his granddad losing his life, and you're always waiting on that call. Like, we've had cases of children have to jump through the top window. We've had other cases of people losing family pets, people mistaken identity, their homes being burnt down. So it's very chronic on that end, and you just don't want the state to come in, and this is the conversation I was having today, that they were like, we need to address this, we need to step into the space, but you don't want to just then get too heavy on it, evict people, move in, and like you want to always make sure that you want responses, but you don't want everyone to be targeted to be causing a problem, because some people are absolutely targeted in this. They have no say what happens to their home, particularly other cases as well as if they're taking over properties where someone might have a drug debt or whatever, and they'll take over the property and use it for their own use, and that tenant won't have a say in it. But they're wide enough to know that if they pay the rent, nobody can do anything about it, so you take over the rent card. So all of those, like, they're just particular, like, it's not the whole area is flooded with that. But what I find is that you could have a house on a street that could affect like hundreds of other houses because of the fear of everybody of what can happen. And if they're seeing somebody else being targeted by an arson attack, there's no way that they feel like they're supported to stand up against that, you know? And there's confinement from the state as well. The guards will push the area into a particular state in Cherry Orchard, and once they go in there, they don't mind because it's in there and they know where it is, particularly onto traveller sites as well. I found I've had that experience where they won't go in onto the site, and once the issue makes it onto site, they'll go on and then they'll say they don't have the resources to deal with stuff as well. So there's a level of confinement within particular areas, and the level of intimidation is just through the roof.
So that's interesting what you said. So it's like sort of like an unofficial operational policy of pushing the problem into a certain area and just saying, oh, well, we're not going to deal with that.
Yeah, and that would be my experience of it. Like, you know, that... I would remember challenging the guards on time, and they had driven one of their cars up there to saloons, and the minute they had brought it up to that area, you know, a window had gone through, and I had said, yeah, but everybody knows that you're dealing with young adults who shouldn't be behaving that way. That's not justifying it or anything, but I'm like, but you do know the fallout, that's what's going to happen. So you're kind of going, why did you go up and do that? Because then once the car's gone, it's gone for the night, and there's no patrols and stuff like that. So there's this frustration, because the guards will come in and say that they're not funded and that was a political decision. And then areas then, they'll say, well, people need to be reporting this. And then if they do report it, they'll get the guard station will say, sorry, we've no car to send up at the minute. They're labelled then of reporting it. And then they're targeted. And you just keep getting this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So, you know, look, it's not all doom and gloom and all, but they're just the pieces that you pick up when you bring to the conversation to try and say, let's not get ourselves into these cycles back and forth. Let's work collaboratively about it, and make sure we're supporting the communities to get back on their feet. It's not just about going in there doing it all for them. It's you want to see all the residents' committees back. You want to see people taking pride of place in their area. You want to see the guards responding and, you know, not just leaving things to fester. DCC getting on top of their brief as well, not just allowing cases to really be like not addressed when it's been reported over and over. So that to me was what will establish a safe community, you know, and that's the bit that you try and focus on, is to just keep driving forward and pushing that argument ahead.
Yeah, it's sort of like a thing where you need to keep on top of it and always keep pushing. Yeah. But then you also have, I can imagine, the problem is that's just one issue that you have, but then you also have other things in, let's say, the community, let's say stuff to do with bus routes or all other type of things. And is there any other, let's say, challenges you think you face now, or that the communities face now in that you're a councillor?
Well, just about 2 years ago, we had a big campaign around Bus Connect, and a lot of people were angered because it's the level of engagement is important, and this is what we were trying to sell to the NTA was, look, they were like, we don't like to come out and speak to big groups in the community because it can lose its pace and all. But our argument going back as well is like, but listen to those who use the transportation within their area. So like elderly people who use the bus all the time, who rely on it, they're changing that route from like it was every 15 to 20 minutes to once an hour. And if that bus doesn't come along in that hour, then that's 2 hours route, and they're standing at a bus stop waiting for it. And like you'd get them and they'd be like, I just wanted to go up and get a few messages and go to mass and stuff. Like that's their daily routine. And they're like, oh yeah, but if you walk down the main road, like this, the NTA, they were like, you can get any bus. And I'm like, well, these people have severe arthritis. It struggle to even get to the corner, you know? So you would have an awful lot of like transportation and explaining it to people who want to see more cycle lanes and make it more accessible. That's everybody wants that.
Yeah.
But it's bringing, again, a community voice along with that to make sure that nobody is left behind in that process. And even if you don't take on board what they say, you're listening to them saying, thanks for giving us your opinion. We'll try and incorporate it in. You know, there's this big thing in our area about Save the Roundabout, and everyone thought we were mad. But on that roundabout, there was like a time capsule that they had buried stuff for people who had died particularly through the heroin issue in Ballyfermot and stuff. Like, so there was a lot of local ties to stuff that people wouldn't have got. You couldn't sit there online and go, actually, well, this is what it is, but they thought we were mad. But I was like, but that's a civic space it has become rather than just a traffic issue. Yeah. So they've incorporated that into the front of the church a bit and tried to save it. So engagement and just making sure people are moving along together with all the changes coming down the line is what you'd find. You know, meeting some people this week in Chapel Lizard and stuff, looking about establishing an AstroTurf and stuff. Like, so you kind of like can chip away at some of that, but it's a long process. But it's usually around amenity spaces, making sure that all communities have access to green space, particularly the high level of apartments that are coming into the area as well. And making sure that the community, I suppose I keep coming back to, and that's what I'm realising now, the more I'm in there, is what triggers me more is that's always centred to the conversation is, fair enough, let's do these things now. What's it going to look like in 15 years? Are we going to be coming back on, we should have put this in, we should have addressed that. Get it right now, get the headaches now, and then we'll have hopefully a sustainable community when we're really cramming everyone into these high-rise units, you know?
Yeah, I think that's also an issue kind of near where I live, sort of near City West, is that like when I first moved up there, I think it was like 2016 or something.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of empty land and stuff like that, and you could say, oh, okay, they can build houses and stuff. But the pace of the apartments and stuff, the blocks that are going up, it's like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And it's great that houses are being built, but like there was supposed to be this big neighbourhood park.
Yeah, exactly.
And then developers said, well, we're not doing that anymore. You're like, what do you mean we're not doing that? What do you mean you're not doing that anymore? And there's nothing you can do. There seems like there's almost nothing you can do.
Because it's so quick.
Yeah.
Because they're on to the next project and they're on to the next project. And then they're like, and the thing is that, this is my argument with Dublin City Council, like they have to put that into their planning application to get approval to build the units. And I'm like, yeah, but nobody's enforcing to make sure that that piece of it is delivered on. And it's the same old argument all over again. So you're right in highlighting that. And I think everybody should be, to make sure now, like, look, and you just have to break their heart on it, is that like you have to deliver on this, because a lot of people and some executives in Dublin City Council say to me, we don't want another Ballymun. And I'm like, first of all, that's offensive, because it wasn't the units and it wasn't the people. It's been well documented that it was the lack of infrastructure and services that didn't come behind that. Like, so this is literally why we're having this conversation. Yeah. But I think it's the high turnover as well as staffing in there as well. People who get promotion, which is fine, they'll move on. So you kind of keep having to go back and dig up, make sure this is always on the table. So to me, it might sound repetitive to other members on the council, but with the change in executive, you just keep having to plug away, you know? Yeah.
And I think it's really important what you said, that, but what's it going to look like in the next 15 years?
Yeah.
You know, okay, we're building. That's great. We're building.
Yeah.
But where's the community centre? Where's AstroTurfs?
Yeah.
Where's the amenities for the young people? Yeah. It's kind of ironic that the person said, oh, we don't want another Ballymun. It's like, well, if you don't plan it properly with amenities and services.
Yeah. You literally have the roadmap drawn for you there, because you can pull on that and say, you know, this is what it looks like, and this is how all of the, like, this is how the communities fall apart. You know, is like if you don't incorporate in, and then like this frustrating point, we don't put benches in because there's too many people hanging around them. They're benches, people sitting on them, like, you know. Took away.
Don't sit down on the bench.
You know what I mean? Don't just sitting there for a minute now when it's bright out, and then like loads of bins. You know, too many people are using the bins and all. I'm like, so just dump at the bin or where the bin used to be, and all. So Like, you just kind of feel like this, when are we going to just stop being so afraid or risk adverse, as I found out from the community sector, is what a lot of them have become. Like, I think anyone that's living in communities like that now needs to really hold them to account and get organised on that, because once it's built and once people have moved on, it's very hard to get it back in again. It's like you only get anything in an area, I find, when there's some new development coming in and you can say, we're going to oppose this to death until you deliver on this one over here for the reasons given, and that's when they can get frustrated with it, and they can try and portray you're against housing and you don't want this, and and you'll see it in the Dáil where they're like, your councillors went against this out in your area, but really what it is you're like, because of the community and service piece, like everyone should be. I don't know if it's practiced even in other European cities, or are we just unique in that we just keep ramming through a lot of housing, and we'll get back to that in a minute.
Yeah,
such bad practice as like a policy driven.
It is, and it seems like a lot of stuff is kind of getting rubber stamped.
Yeah. And then you'll see even more now. Let's reduce the sizes more. Like I was on the radio there a while ago on one of the controversial radio stations, and they were trying to give out about tenants in Newmarket Square because they were trying to get access. So they were built to rent originally. They were trying to get access to the services in the building. They're not allowed to use the front door. They're not allowed to go by reception. They have to go on the side.
There's a gate, isn't there?
Yeah.
I've seen that, yeah.
And even on the exit wise, so it's complete segregation on that front, right? So there's 413 units in there. I think only 43 of them are social. And it was because it was built to rent and they have reduced the size of the unit, they had put these extra luxurious spaces in to try and sell it. Saunas, a cinema room, a library, right? And then the way it kept being sold was, these council tenants want a sauna, and I'd love to have a sauna, and I'd love to have a library. And they're like, we're not even saying that. Can we walk in the front door? Like, can we just be included in the mix? Well, the cafe's open from 9 to 5. You can use it then and all. So you could see it just all kind of turning in on it. That's social erosion of a community. Like, segregation has always been told, and any community is not a good road to go down. So we haven't gotten that bit of it right. Now, some of them are catching up in there because they're getting the point. They're getting a bit of the message now. Mm-hmm. But it's just something I just keep thinking we need to highlight it, because we cannot keep making the same mistakes and then just keep doing these regresses, in community. Like, yeah, it's just so frustrating. It's just,
I can imagine.
Been there, done that, seeing the fallout. Yeah. Let's get it right, especially the amount of money we spend on it. Like, don't waste public money. So, and let's not let drag up the children's hospital and stuff, which is sucking the budget of everything. But like,
how much did that cost again?
I didn't actually stop listening. Yeah, all I heard was, no, you're not getting this and X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, that's that hospital. Like, it's dragging the budget of everything now. Everything's being cut and counted.
Yeah,
it's just not publicised as much, but they have to find the money somewhere.
Is it one of the most expensive in Europe or something?
In the world, nearly.
In the world,
I think. Yeah.
Okay.
No, which, come here, if it delivers on the service, brilliant, and that's not going to be the argument, but it's just the public purse, because then it's frustrating when people are like, what are we paying into? We're not getting this coming back. And then I find they get very legal heavy then on dealing with things to be seen to be on top of it. Let's extend the sentence. Then the situation has already occurred. So you'll just keep coming back to all of this,
Yeah, like it seems that like with some, now not all, I don't know a huge amount about a lot of the developers, but it seems like certain crowds of them, if you let them, they'll just build whatever they want.
Unbelievably. So we have one in Bluebell as well that was 4 years ago. It was built, finished, and an approved housing body has taken over, and got calls there. Remember the 50 days of rain we had? Oh yeah. And there's a default in the build, and the water's pouring down and flooded the tenants on the bottom floor. They had to be put up in a hotel. Like, not a fault of theirs, completely down to the developer and design, but he's gone. They're gone. So I don't know who's going to fix that. But we had another one then in Chapel Lizard where the pumps had been put down in the basement, and with that rain as well, the whole basement flooded. So the tenants had no water into those showers, no washing machines, no access for weeks. So they were given bottled water. And so these are the type of things that are going to be frustrating, because it's, well, who's accountable now? Because the state has taken a 25-year lease on these units. So if these units are being thrown up, and we've seen through so many other issues what can happen, then who's responsible? Who's going to foot the bill to fix these design flaws? So we're getting a lot now. Did you see the report actually the other day in Waterford where 2 children were playing on the balcony and the glass shattered?
Oh,
And
no.
the 2 kids fell out, and apparently that there's been like 25 complaints made to the council as well. So it's not a case of even saying, look, it's just like, how do we have to be mindful of all of these issues that come up when we're so quick to build, to try and fill them up as quick. Like there has to be some time given to the long-term sustainability of it all, you know?
Yeah.
Because people just switch off when they hear, and I can understand, because they're like, there's another situation where they've wasted money, and it's very frustrating, you know?
So it sounds like a lot of corners are being cut.
Kind of, and then like it's similar, you'll get these gaps in development, and you'll see in like somewhere, remember they relaxed the fire cert in some units, and then like I think that was around 2008, so they have to go back. Instead of would have cost €60 to put the measures in when they were building them, now it's going to cost thousands to do it or whatever. So you'll get these back where gaps where there's a rush to build, and corners are cut to get them up as quick as, but then again the state ends up coming back to trying, because people have to live in them and stuff. So unfortunately that is one of the things we tend to do, you know.
Yeah, geez, you must be wrecked with all this stuff.
You kind of, yeah. Sometimes, what did I say? Like sometimes I link in with Lynn, you know, Lynn Rowan and stuff like that as well, to try and just on certain projects. And I was laughing at her today. I was like, I'm just going to take some time off to go stare at trees for a while, because like sometimes you just like to go, because it kind of hurts your brain a bit. I'm not going to, like, there's sometimes where you're like, oh, like how did they not listen and get this right? Because like my background is in engineering, I've done an engineering degree, and I think I look at it sometimes with this where you're like, you want to get to the end point, and you want to do it efficiently, you want to do it structured, and you want to do it right, not rushed. So that when you keep doing that, it just actually drives me a bit mad, you know. But look, that's just now because we're speaking about it, and you don't want to lose hope or faith in it all, but you would like to see us getting it right from experience, you know. But maybe that might just be a few issues that came up in the numerous level of developments that have been built. But it just is something for us to not keep, you know, like making mistakes on, to keep our eye on, to make sure that we're not just throwing up poor level development. We're coming back and making sure it's sustainable for people to live in a long time. Where are they going to go if there is an issue, you know? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think there needs to be somebody checking in on what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, checks and balances, thinking, is this the best idea? Why isn't there this here?
Yeah.
You know?
Is this working as long-term leasing? Working in that way, 20 to 25 years, is it good for money? Like, what's the solution? And, you know, we're really relying on approved housing bodies now, and they're trying to catch up with demand. Each one is different. Some are far more experienced and long-term than others. That's fine. Maybe they'll catch up on each other. That's just the nature of business, I suppose. But like, what's the value then of the tenancy on that as well? You know, are we making sure everyone gets a proper like slice of the pie when it comes to their standard of living? Because one approved housing body might be experienced in this, and someone across the road mightn't be, but you are just on the housing list, so you might apply to move into one space. And if it's not maintained well, then, you know, that's not fair on the person who was just happened to get that one who is and stuff, you know. So just like, that's very into the weeds piece of it, and that's probably where I am, obviously, because I'm reading reports 24/7 and stuff that they're throwing at us. But you're keeping an eye on all of that, not just for now, but I'm thinking, like, I just really like the many political reasons and sustainable reasons around everyone just having a safe environment to live in, for particularly kids to grow up in and to thrive, you know.
Do you think that's maybe a bit under threat now?
I think if you were to, I often say this, so I have a 16-year-old, a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. So I often, like, they're at different gaps, so you can see them at different stages. And I often wonder as well, are you looking at young adults? And if you were to keep an eye, so my son would have been involved, would have had a phone because we were co-parenting with his father. So he had access to that before the conversations really kicked in around, you know, phones and taking them away and social media. So my daughters that came after them, they won't have a phone like that. I know now from the conversations and the experience coming back, to try and limit their exposure to the doom and gloom that's out there. Because if you are to go online and you're listening to geopolitics and stuff, you'll probably, how are you meant to plan your adult life in that? Like, where you're just expecting they're like, the planet's heating up, you know, there's going to be another World War III, or there's a housing crisis. Like, how are young people now online even planning their life? I have to hand it to them, because we didn't have that. I would think when I was younger it was Bebo.
Yeah,
so
people,
like,
yeah, I remember that.
Your top 10 friends was as controversial as it got, you know?
Yeah.
So thankfully, that was that. So we're just kind of it's the technology is probably coming fast. So it's probably just looking at all of that. And that's when I think when we're looking at, you know, reports of kids acting up, antisocial behaviour and this, that and the other, if they're at that age, I'm like, as a society, like, there's probably, God knows what's going on in a 15-year-old's head now. Like, there's just so much being thrown at them. let us alone without even going into the manosphere. Like, just in general, like, the whole lot of it is toxic, isn't it? Like,
Have you seen the doc?
I did. And you know what happened to me a while ago? I was at a Marxism festival, and we'd somebody talking about grifters, and I was like, what's the grifters? And then they had said this fella Andrew Tate. Now, this must have been about 4 or 5 years ago. And I went back to my son, and he was 13, and I goes, did you ever hear of this Andrew Tate? And he was like, oh yeah, what colour's your Bugatti? And I was like, what? I was like, do you know him? And he's like, oh, he's gas. I was like, sorry, excuse me. So that was like a year-long debate back and forward of, but like I was glad that I got exposed to even who these people were, so that I can come in and have these debates. Now, I wouldn't be blanket and say authoritarian on it and be like, you shouldn't do this and you can't listen, but I just try and incorporate in, well, that's factually not correct what he's saying. And do you think, like, the whole argument, he was like, yeah, but should, like, you know, a husband take care of his wife and do it? I goes, do you ever see me asking for permission? You know, and then you start to, like, the trigger. So you know, you go back and forward on it. So that in itself is a minefield that I don't know how that's going to play out. However, I do think exposure, that I know a lot of people are giving it about that document saying it didn't go far enough, but it's one step of exposure. Like, you have to just keep chipping away at it, and hopefully people are looking at them saying, what a gobshite, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally get you. And I suppose in the mind of a 15-year-old, the stuff that they're saying maybe makes sense because they don't have enough world experience, or because they're maybe frustrated with their life, and they're teenagers.
Yeah, you know.
But obviously when you're a grown adult, you're going, what the fuck is he talking about?
Like,
You know what I mean?
and just like, and obviously just because they don't believe in half the stuff they're saying themselves.
It's
like,
just sell, it's grifting. Yeah.
It's just making a profit on it. And if anything, hopefully that documentary exposed is literally the money content in it. And, you know, and that's the thing, you just feel like you're locking down your kids a little bit and going, just saying, stay young as long as you can, you know?
Yeah.
Like, as me who was a tearaway, like, that's the funny thing as well. Like, I think the ones who are the bold ones as much come back in now later on in life, from like, what you mean and who, and you're too, like, I don't want to be one of those too controlling on you. I want to let them have experience. And I do have very independent kids, like, you know, they'd be well able to kind of converse, not be rude, but also say, look, I don't agree with that as well. But that's all, I feel like all you can do now as a parent with kids these days, just give them the ability to critically analyse what's coming before them.
Yeah, I think what you did actually makes a lot of sense. Instead of locking it all down, say, that's it, no access to phone, social media.
Yeah.
You made him think about it and debate it with him, you know.
And just try and give them real life scenarios.
Yeah. Obviously, it must have been kind of strange that he thought that when he probably sees you looking after him, working and doing all this stuff.
But I also think as well, isn't it, because he would be like me in some ways as well, is it the natural reaction to go to the opposite end? Yeah. So, like, you know, I be socialist in my politics, and he was like, yeah, well, fascism and all, and he just says these things to provoke me as well, and I'm like, what you mean and all, you know? So, like, he'll swing sometimes to come back, and then just to test it, you know, as they do at that age, particularly because of all the arguments that are coming in around now, and you know, in immigration in Ireland and everything, and like, I'm not with his father, like, and this is probably an interesting thing for a lot of people at home, the nuclear families, they call it, don't they? Like, blended families, and you'll probably have a different household that your kids will be in that won't have the same opinion or whatever. So you have to try and feed them that way. But if they can come out of today's and the last few years unscathed, then fair play to them, all power to them, you know. No housing to go to. They're saying to you now, go to college, do all this, and then they're like, but AI is going to take your job. So, like, there's a lot, you know, coming on for them, but hopefully there's, you know, people just won't stand for it, and they'll stand up and fight back against it. And maybe that's what we should be teaching them, is how to stand for their rights, to articulate what services that they want to see. And like, maybe that's what is more important. I don't know. I'm growing with them as they're going, you know. Sure.
Yeah. Like, it's, I much prefer kind of growing up in the era of my Nokia 3210.
I know. Yeah.
You know, we had a bit of internet, had dial up and stuff. Seemed a lot simpler. It seems like you weren't exposed to so many things, because I think I went on, I think it was Facebook the other day. Yeah. And some of the videos were just like, ugh.
I know.
I was in a perfectly fine mood.
Yeah, I know.
This person talking this absolute nonsense has pissed me off. And I'm like, well, okay, scroll. Oh, that's fine. Nonsense, no.
And I tried it for a month. I was thinking, like, I get these notions now. I was like, I'm not doing social media now for a month. Like. And I was like, I think I'll do it forever. But you can't, like, it's hard sometimes as well, isn't it, when world events are just kicking off. And then sometimes you're like, what happened? Like, you know. And I found it particularly really hard the last 2 years with what was going on in Palestine as well, with the mothers and like their children passing away. Like that really, and you try and not be like, woe is me, but what you're trying to say is, how can anyone in that position try and pick their kids up off the ground like that in pieces and stuff? Like it was really hard to even, what do? You kind of feel paralysed with the response that you can give and stuff. And obviously, mobilisation is such a key thing to do and show international solidarity and all. But like that for social media, like that you can go on, and if you're having a day where you're like feeling, tough in life, and then you see stuff like that as well, it can have the ability to just paralyse you in your thought process and to disengage it, make you disassociate. So that's hopefully now, I actually think it's going to become cooler as kids are growing up to not have social media. I think they're going to be like, let's have that lived experience live, like, and they might have it in some format, but you'd like to see that, because live it rather than just coming atop and all the bullying and the self-conscious stuff for women. Like, you can see beautiful women and them just being really targeted. And it's just
the comments,
terrific. Like,
the comments of just some people saying absolute like horrible stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, who are you to say that? And are you all right there? What's your problem?
And then you have to stop yourself then. You're like, what'd you say, Sharon?
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, and then I'm annoyed again.
Yeah.
That is actually, it's funny that you said that. Like, if it would become cool to kind of go off social media and stuff, there's been a rise, I think, in like sales of dumb phones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about one.
So is that
it's a bit hard with the podcast to think, I'm not going to do social media. Just can't. No one will listen to it then. I was like, oh, maybe I could do a dumb phone for some stuff. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, Google Maps.
I know.
My bank app.
Podcasts. But
listening to podcasts.
Apparently you weren't meant to do that. Well, apparently we weren't meant to, even you're saying I'm not doing social media. That was YouTube and all as well. Whereas I was like, I'm not on social media, but I was watching the podcast videos 24, walking around.
Exactly, yeah.
So I didn't disengage, apparently. But all of that, I just, what would I do? Like, I probably would be good, but it's a detox, isn't it? Like, it's something that you'd have to probably reflect, probably go a bit mad for a little bit for the first while. Yeah,
you'd probably feel really out of the loop. I remember one time when I took a break, I got a newspaper or whatever it was. I was in the coffee shop, and then I went like this on the article. I was like, it's just an instinctive thing. I went like that to try and push it up to go down. I was like, oh my God, I just did that.
Yeah, it's just
because I'm so conditioned to be on the phone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Or then what you pick up and look at, like, that's what they were saying, weren't they? People pick up their phones.
Yeah.
So much to look at it, and it's probably like when people saying they come off smoking and they do the act of having the smoke and the physical part of it, or getting up and walking out and going. So there's a process to all of it. But look, I don't know if we're going to save it now, but I do think you'd like to think that generations behind us will,
Yeah, you never know. There might be I
might start a new wave.
You might start a new wave.
Kill, say no to social media. Imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd shut me down straight away. But however, someone might make it a killer
approach. You get your kids like looking at you going, what?
Yeah. She's on one again. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, so you've been a councillor for about 10 years?
Yeah.
So when you look back of when you first started as being a councillor, what are some of your kind of most memorable moments, and then some moments that you felt really, really challenging?
Yeah. It's hard to probably pick out just memorable ones in particular, because I suppose that would have to be when what I really like to see is when people do get into their houses and stuff, and they'll come back and say, like, you can see them getting settled into their home. Unfortunately, that means probably someone else didn't get it because there's a huge list of people applying. But you like to really see people be given an opportunity when they've been fighting, because what I find as well is when people become near the top of the housing list as well, they get really anxious because they've waited so long.
Yeah.
That they're like, is this for real? They're like, is someone going to take this away? So it just messes with their nervous system so much. So that would probably be really positive, is just kind of seeing people getting settled in and watching the happiness in that moment. And then some of the probably challenging parts would be around like personal attacks. It hasn't happened in a while, but you'll find it when immigration flare-ups. You'll get a lot of angry men coming on to you and saying, like, sure, we'll shut up you, or we born you out of your gaff. And you'll get these brave men who will say they're down the road. The irony is lost on them, because they'll be like, we're down here protecting Irish women and Irish children, but then they're telling me they're going to kill me in the other breath. So some of that is flare-ups. It's not something that you'd find physically confrontational, but again, would be online.
Yeah.
But it's disappointing when it comes to that, because then you'll get a lot of people who'll come up to you and go, geez, I don't know how you do that job. Because some of the stuff that happens online, they're like, and we said it, and I found myself the other day going, that didn't even actually faze me. And then I was like, oh, maybe that's a bad thing that you're not fazed by it, because you've probably just been like, oh yeah, whatever, here's another person giving out on that end. So that can be because then you're looking at, look, I'm not going to be in this role forever. Like it's not sustainable. And I do think having a turnover and giving, young people the opportunity to get into politics is a positive step that we should all be doing. But who's going to run in local politics given the exposure that some people see? They'll probably be like, I'm not going into that, like, to expose everything to be scrutinised in that way,
It seems like the landscape to be a councillor or a politician is so much more hostile now than it was maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah, and probably a little bit of the access to people as well. And some of that is just the pure frustration people have around their services not being met and housing. And that's understandable, like, that they're like, how will, I need to be housed, and 100% you do, and I need, SNA spaces for kids, or for helping kids with additional needs, or else special schools, and all of that stuff 100% should be done. And if when they're not being listened to, some people probably, they feel hopeless and they resort to absorbing the psychological warfare that I call, that's online, that targets them with this is why, these bad actors are doing this. This is like videos that are doctored to really add an extra layer of fear on top of it, rather than giving us the opportunity to sit down and discuss and go, well, how is all of these, the world upheaval affecting you? And how do we articulate that to those in power and say, look, if you don't change this, you're going to be held accountable. But there's obviously online targeting to really get into areas and disrupt any mobilisation, I find. And I'm going to say, on the left, people now are throwing left and right all over the place, and it kind of triggers some people and they'll switch off. But that would have been the natural space historically of the left, would have been mobilising and building communities and getting campaigns going. And when they get in and target that and fracture it, then we don't have the other governmental parties standing in and representing that. So who else is going to? And that's where a lot of this poison festers in a way, because it's not only affecting those who are resharing it and targeting you, it's affecting their services, because they're not going to be able to get up to that level to really hit the political parties that have been in there for decades to say, like, you shouldn't be getting re-elected on the basis of that you had failed in so many ways, and this is the fallout. Your social policy has destroyed these communities, whether it's cut to lone parents, cut to spaces for kids with additional needs. All of that is social. That's all policy led. And that's one of the frustrating, disappointing points, I suppose, is not the people who are absorbing it at times, because they're trying to survive, but it's the outside forces that are going in doing this damage. That it's not, people don't want to hear that debate at the time, because they're so angry and so frustrated. So you just have to try and navigate it and do as best you can. So I would hate to see that would take away from people getting into politics. I'd love to see more of a diverse, marginalised communities getting into it. I'd love to see someone from the traveller community in an Air Council really hammering it to them, because they get away with murder in there on the delivery of traveller accommodation. They just completely sideline it and stuff like that. So they're the avenues I'm going to focus on anyway. The few years that I'm in there now is like traveller accommodation, and really making sure that we get behind that. And that's their air sites. We should be managing them. We shouldn't be allowed things to get as bad as they do, and really give that voice to it alongside the travelling community, not on behalf of, but working with them to really go in there and hammer that message. That's something I'm looking forward to in the next few years.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd kind of get behind something. I need a bit of something to stick my teeth into, to keep me focused on that one thing, while everything else can be a bit hazy.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. And you were saying just briefly, a lot of personal attacks, and are these sort of like accounts that are like fake set up, as in, you see a lot of them like bot accounts and stuff like that, or people, like, are these actual like real people?
Some of them would be through so like what you'd find is the narrative of it. I remember at the beginning, in about 3 years ago, when it really started, that they were like, did you say that? Like, because they were kind of like, well, I worked with Hazel on another thing, and I thought, is she not on the same side of us with this? Because so was confusion at the beginning. And then they just put so much stuff out about you, like, is in a generalised term, like you're woke, and or like people for profit is this or this, that and the other. That then it just becomes like a pile on that, like, what's right and what's not right. And then if you spend your time defending it as well, are you feeding into it and stuff? So that's the thing. I said, look, the best way I can find to tackle some of it is just to meet like with people directly rather than trying to navigate it online. Because even when you try and share something that is a good news story, you know, it's going to be, this is coming down the road, this new project, and you'll just get, someone will just come in and go, yeah, you're going to fill it full of immigrants, are you? You know? And you're like, it's a park. Dave, where am I going to put them? Do you know? Like at one point they were like, she just has them out her back in her shed and all. I'm like, what? Like where? Like, you know, so, like it's ironic. It's, you know, hysterical. What's it called? What you call that? Sarcastically kind of funny in a way. Some of the stuff that you come back on it because you're just like, this doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
So you have to laugh sometimes, but at the other times as well. Look, it's just the nature of space now. At the minute, you have to navigate. Like, you know,
you don't seem very fazed by it.
I think as well, like, because, like...
Which is good.
Yeah. And that's why sometimes I do be like, am I just gone that hard and now? But some of it as well, look, you just have to cut it off. And then I have to go home to my family home as well. So you just can't carry it, like. So that's why I'll try and stay away from it unless if I have a lot of time during the day, kids are going to school, then I'll open up my apps and I'll go through it. So rather than open up to someone at 7 o'clock or in the evening and someone said something dodgy and it can put you into a bad mood and it can carry that. So I just have a process, I suppose, wrapped around it. And like you'll speak to other colleagues in there, you'll have good community organisations around you who'll check in with you all the time if something like that kicks off.
Yeah.
So you just have to go on. But I think, it's not a good thing to be, not to be fazed by it.
Disassociated.
It just is that, yeah.
Yeah, but I suppose, like no one's gonna like that type of thing happening and stuff.
Yeah.
But as well, everyone has their own way of managing it.
Yeah, and I think if you look at it politically as well, which I suppose is good to have a connection into, you know, people like the party, and you're having national conferences and you're having debates, and like as I said, like I like to really get stuck into local community stuff, and that's where I spend most of my time. But when you have a broad understanding of where this all originates from, you can analyse it in that way and be like, you know, there's so much more behind all of this, and it essentially is the lack of delivery on so much, the negative scope going forward. And they really want communities and people to be on their knees. Now, they don't want people to be able to organise, to stand up in that way. Now, I think people will fight through, and it's very hard to keep that maintained. Like, you know, the nature of it is people to get together, organise and build a society together. And I think that's how I have as well been able to process it, is by knowing, you know, whether it's the growth of fascism and not like a huge dictator taking over here, but how fascism drips into social policy. And you start seeing it creeping in through that way. And, you know, that's where you kind of have to you could see it and you want to push back on, you know. And you can't look at this big one, but I know we've Trump over there, but like at this stage, you can't even keep up with him. But you just have to look at it in your own way, in your own society, and just, you know, and try and target that way. And then you have the whole like AI and what's real and what's not again to people. So I think now at some stage, though, people are like, I don't even know, like, can I absorb that? Like, what?
Yeah, I really hate seeing a lot of the AI stuff, because you're like, is this real? And then you're checking the letters or a sign or something like that, or checking the way people move.
And all these random hands in the background or something.
Someone has like 6 fingers or something like that. And it's bad. And I hate the way a lot of AI is being used very insidiously.
Yes,
you know, to push a certain type of narrative. To defame someone. And to really steer the conversation.
And by the time they've done it and they've churned it out so much, they're on to the next thing. So even if you get a chance to catch up and review it, and then you're just like, it's just gone. And how you address that, you probably need a big machine to do it, or do you just keep chipping away? But I mean, hopefully we'll come back from that. I think a lot of it was maybe a reactionary situation with COVID as well, in the way of like that time to that really, I think that was under the 4 steps of when we change as a society, and there's so much bombarding put on. We've never really come out of the pressures internationally from that as well, you know? Yeah,
because it seems that, you know, not just Ireland, the world, it just went bonkers after COVID. I don't know, maybe it's because we were all just cooped up for so long or something. I don't know.
I think they're going to study it for years. It's going to be one of them where they'll be like, it'll be a numerous amount of things, I think, that they will be like, and this added to it and this, and then, you know, the manipulation of social media and the amount of like one billionaires on all these social media apps and the whole lot of it as well. Like, I think it's just layer upon layer upon layer of it. But we haven't had a chance to take a breath, I find, as a society, to get ourselves back again. And until they get behind organising housing in that way, and education, and like the amount of women out there and parents, like, but you know, usually it's the women that are, I find, are the core holding it, trying to get their kids into spaces, and they're getting centrifugal letters all the time because they have additional needs and stuff. Like, all of that just chips away at people's mentality to try and engage in society in general, because the way they'll project it onto you is, as a woman, if you can't get this right, you can't get your house right, you can't get your child into school, you can't earn an amount of wage that can get them everything, it's all of this, you're a failure.
Yeah.
And you find an awful lot of women are just labelled because of all of the societal pressures put on women. That's not spoken about from that angle all the time, that if they don't achieve these unreachable gains and that's out of their control, then they have failed their children or whatever. And it's all of that as well. You'll to try and communicate and get behind and organise and support women in that way. But there's a lot. I'm doom scrolling here. I'm not kind of just throwing everything.
Well, I think it just really says the state of affairs now.
Yeah.
In Ireland and the world. So, I think life nowadays is just whole big one big doom scroll, doesn't it?
Yeah, we just, oh my God, we have become social media.
I know.
Social media is us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But no, I think you're right. Like it's just turn on the news and it's just like, oh God, what's happened now?
Yeah.
And it's just a bit of constant doom and gloom. And where I think probably initially with social media, when it first kind of started, it's like, oh, this is fun, I'm sharing my photos and this and that.
Yes.
Connect with friends. And now it's just a constant stream of negativity.
Yeah. Pressure
with some cat videos in between.
Yeah. Did you ever see that documentary on Netflix as well, Don't Fuck With Cats?
I haven't seen it, but I know it's really big.
Yeah. Like the little breakouts of things like that as well, where you can just probably, and the arts has been a big thing as well. Now that we're saying that, is that to go off and just enjoy cultural and art stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the only way sometimes to really break out from that. Maybe that's something as well that could be a case of people making an argument to break away from AI and social media, is protecting the arts, protecting crafts, handmade stuff that people have laboured on. And you might see little shoots of that I'm only seeing now, that people have been doing it for years, but people are navigating more towards that, about just disengaging and probably building support around that, making sure we don't lose the graw for that.
Yeah, I know definitely filmmaking is kind of a bit under threat now with it, because there's people are making entire AI little short films and stuff like that. And I believe, who is it? I think it's Ben Affleck started up an AI video company or something like that, and he's selling it on and stuff like that. And I don't know, because you kind of might lose the craft then, like what you're saying about lots of other different types of arts. You kind of lose the craft and you'll lose the culture around it.
And the human feel behind the camera, who'll know that to make that judgment of something that an AI probably wouldn't pick out, because it's not human. It's the only thing that you could really aim to. That'd be a huge shame. Particularly those starting out and having a love for it and wanting to create more on it. And then it just becomes why would you do it, and how are you going to fund it then? Where you could get grants and whatever else. And if you have the people like that who've made it, like Ben Affleck or whatever, just starting these AI companies, and you're kind of pulling up the bridge behind them or the ladder behind them type of thing. It's just people who have that skill going out doing it, and probably starting off on a small grant or small funding or whatever baby smart support from some organisation, will be lost if they can churn out something that's going to make a profit through AI. Yeah. It's just terrible, disgusting.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. Definitely need to protect the arts.
Yeah, so that maybe be another, maybe we'll just start redirecting it into we have to find hobbies.
Yeah, we have to find hobbies.
And just...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think social media kills a lot of hobbies.
Yeah.
I know, I was always reading books all the time, and then I was like, I'll just go and read it.
I know. Give me a synopsis.
Forcing myself now. I am reading a book. I was great, okay.
Yeah, I have to get back into it as well. Yeah, I know. It's just it erodes the time scale of that. You just quick, isn't it? Give me information, churn it around. Yeah. I've watched a 2-minute TikTok video, therefore I know what happened in this film type of thing. It can ruin it nearly, can't it? Now?
Those fucking spoiler accounts. And I think it was Django Unchained or something like that. It showed the death of a major character once. I won't say who it was in the film because I hate spoilers. Yeah. And I think I was like, you bastards. Yeah. I haven't even watched that film yet. Yeah. And now I've seen the death of a major character in it. Do you know what I mean?
I know. But, that's why you try. I even try. I do like it for some things. It's good, maybe giving you films that wouldn't be in circulation and stuff. Yeah. And then I'll go back and I'll save it and say at some point I'll watch this or whatever. I'll probably add it to that list that I never go back to again, but I've saved it. So I don't mind that sort of stuff, but like that again, yeah. But I do think, I just think people are going to drive away from it. They'll have to. It's it's human nature to want to create, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I
you
agree.
know?
Yeah, it definitely
Imagine
is.
like underground would become the reality of it, and the main market will become AI generated slop. Like, and we'll all be having these like off grid, like kind of like, you know, watching our films or something, because it's just smaller and smaller market.
Sounds like a very good plot for a dystopian sci-fi movie.
You, I'm actually building something here.
It does sound like it would be a very entertaining film.
Yeah, what'll happen to the arts?
Yeah, that was a quite interesting kind of pivot we did, but I suppose that all kind of feeds back into the challenges today to being a councillor. But I know you've kind of done a big recap of your 10 years and all, and so you said for the future you're working with getting, you know, proper with the housing situation for the traveller community and stuff like that, which is great. What are some of the other things that you're kind of like the projects that you're really kind of getting stuck into now?
Well, I've done a lot in the last, say, 5 years around empty properties in the area and voids and stuff like that. So that was really highlighting that and plugging away. I was now like an investigative journalist, because you're like, why is this house? Why is it there? And that has really turned around. So and I would have been focusing a lot around the approved housing bodies and these big apartment blocks and making sure that they're given community spaces and stuff. So that's where I was kind of sitting back reflecting, going like, that's now rolling and it's coming through the council, and they have incorporated it into different SPCs. So I'm going to move from the housing SPC now onto the arts SPC, and I never really looked at the arts as something attainable from my end. Like, I was just there, like I didn't really feed into it. I did, you know, music and stuff when I was younger, did the fiddle and stuff, you know, little bits here and there in school and stuff. But I'd like to get stuck into that a bit more now that I have time to kind of reflect more on, you know, what community stuff that we've done, or, you know, the struggle of women in society in general, you know. So like, there's just, I find that more where my headspace is always going to. So I'd like to look at that as part of it going forward. Arts, community, the culture. You know, I got funding this year as well for what's a horses through history, we called it, for what's urban horse ownership like within the Ballyfermot area, because it would have been based back when they would have had no traders from the coal and fruit and veg and whatever up till now, because obviously there's been a big issue with urban horse ownership, but there's obviously been history behind all that. So looking and bringing art projects like that into really urban settings, and what does it look like from people living in socio economic disadvantaged, as they'd call it, communities. What's art like to them? So that would be something that really, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know what it looks like. I'm not 100% sure, but that's the interest. That's the good thing in the arts. It could be anything.
So art is subjective as well.
That's the thing. Like so between that and I said like the LTACC, I'm working with friends and community in the travelling community that I've seen to really just, they've all been so downtrodden by society. Not to their own detriment, you know, but just from that aspect, what I just say, they need to get more support from the DCC officials on that end, you know.
Okay, yeah. So you have some big plans.
Yes, yeah. A woman on a mission, yeah.
You'll be kept busy.
Yeah, taking down social media in the meantime, you know.
You're getting your dumb phone now.
Yeah. I won't be able to see the clips of it. Yeah.
Oh, well, Hazel, it's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
Very interesting chat. We'll actually manage to pivot to a lot of current events and social media and AI and manosphere, all that type of stuff.
The good stuff,
all the good stuff, yeah. But thanks so much for coming in and talking to me today. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the 6th episode of Talk with Patrick. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.